for it.
Mayor, with respect to the South Water Street bike lane, your instinct on where this came from, did you get the sense that businesses on South Water Street were in communication with the DOT, and that's where this 1999 law was sort of pulled up from, or was this simply the DOT saying, well, we got to keep everything procedurally functional and legal?
No, from what I understand, there's one particular advocate that's been working with the businesses, and has been very vocal on a number of issues in that area. As she brought it to the attention of DOT, and that's where DOT then decided to send a letter. But look, 2 points. Well, 3 points. First of all, the project is complete. We did years worth of community outreach to businesses and to residents, and we've gotten so much support for the project. And the input that we've received has actually shaped the project, so we've taken that into account. The second thing is, we've done a preliminary legal analysis, not the full one yet, but preliminarily what we're hearing is that, the federal DOT basing something on like a 20-something plus year old, I mean, it's a thin argument. It's a thin case to begin with. I can't imagine that. We'll see how the full analysis comes out, but it seems entirely unnecessary. And then the last point is that everyone is for these kinds of street improvements and bike lanes, but not in their backyard. Right? That's always the case, and we're always going to see that. After a certain point, you just have to say, trust the process. We engage the community in this. Let's move forward and show the community what this looks like. And eventually what I believe you're going to find is that not just the residents, but the business owners on that strip, they're going to end up loving it. And I can understand where they're coming from. It's been such a tough year with COVID, and anything that might or potentially impact your business, you're concerned about. But we've done the traffic studies, we've been through this, and we're confident that we have a good plan in place. I think back to, and some of you may remember when we did the loop around Roger Williams Park. The amount of community opposition that came out for that was overwhelming. But we knew that we had a good plan, and we knew it was going to be it was going to be safe. And you talk to folks there now, and folks love it. The parade of horribles that folks were anticipating or claiming would come about actually never materialized. And what we need to do is just show the city and show the community what this looks like. And the more folks see it and feel it and are part of it, the more they'll enjoy it, and I think over the long term, the less they'll oppose it.
Mayor Elorza,
let me just follow up on it. Yeah.
Did your office know about the 1999 C&M agreement between Federal Highway Administration, DOT, and the City of Providence, or did that catch you by surprise when that was dropped?
Yeah, so the planning department was not aware of that, as far as I can tell, as we went in, and they do a thorough job with these things, but dating, going back to 20 plus years. On every project, especially for something like they're alleging, is just unreasonable and unnecessary. But to the extent of my knowledge, they weren't aware of it.
Mayor Elorza, 21 homicides so far, right in the city. Throughout the week, we've been talking with that community on Broad Street and others that are experiencing this uptick in violence. Yeah. What needs to happen to prevent a 22nd homicide in the city?
Yeah, the short answer to that is that a lot needs to happen. This is something that needs to be addressed from every single angle. So we have to do our part here at the city level. So continuing to, provide, the outreach to the community, provide opportunities for young people, continue through our police department to get guns off of the streets, having that police presence. So all of the work that we've been doing here at the local level. But it's work that we can't do alone, right? We need, other levels of government. We need other folks to step up and do their part as well. What we're seeing right now is due to a combination of, I believe, 3 overarching factors. The first one is there's a lot of anger out there in society. I mean, part of it is the anxiety of the pandemic, but it just feels like we live in a very divisive world where we're at each other's throats all the time, and people are on their last fuse. And so we have to do something about that. Second, there are just so many guns on the streets. You speak to any of the detectives in the police department, and we've had shootings, going back decades here in the city. But what we're seeing over the past year and a half is completely new, where you're seeing shell casings, a dozen, 20. We even had 60 shell casings at one scene in one of the firepower that's out there, both the amount of guns and these semi-automatic weapons where folks let out, a dozen shots in a matter of seconds. That's completely new, and we got to get these guns off the streets. That takes state action, that takes federal action. That's far beyond, just what cities can do. And then the last one, and this is something that I've been speaking out about a lot more recently, is that you have a lot of anger, you have more guns, and as if that isn't enough, then you have social media. Social media is fueling a lot of this. In fact, we're seeing that a lot of these gang beefs, they originate on social media. And we used to say that people act out online in a way that they would never act out in person. And I think that was true maybe a couple of years ago, but what we're seeing right now is that the virtual world is bleeding into the real world. And what they see online happening in other cities, or what's going on, the back and forth, it's spilling over into our streets. And there's hearings going on in Congress around right now. We know that the Facebook algorithm, it promoted divisive posts. I mean, just rile people's anger up, and that makes them more money. That's another element to this that needs to be addressed. So it's local action, but we also need support from other levels of government and other folks that are that's where some of these causes reside.
Mayor Elorza,
give me just a
question. We're at an economic event. Getting back to the bike path, can you speak to the positive nature of traffic calming techniques like bike paths, like getting away from parallel parking, as to a positive economic impact on the very community that they're part of?
Yeah, we've done a lot of community outreach on this, and we know that folks want these safer, complete streets. For generations, we've designed our cities around cars and not around people. And look, I grew up in the city, and when I was growing up in the city, we used to play outside all the time, right? The streets were our playground. You talk to parents today, they don't let kids outside. And it's not just, sort of other issues about, concerns about violence or crime, but they talk about the speeding going on in the neighborhoods, the fact that cars are just like flying down the street. They want these road improvements on the main streets and on the side streets. And look, we're living in an increasingly dense city. Our population increased to 190,000, the largest 10-year increase since the 1930s. We have a lot of people and a lot of cars. Cars don't fit everywhere. And we can only imagine more congestion and traffic problems unless we start to shift our focus and change more to a culture of walking, biking, and getting around by different means. So we're about 10 years late to the party. There's so many cities that are years ahead of us, but we're trying to make up for being late to this. And I understand the anxiety. I understand that change causes people to be concerned about what that means for them and for their businesses. But other cities have done it. There are so many examples of cities that have done it successfully in a way that it's been embraced. And I believe that more that people see it and become familiar with it, the more they're going to support it, and the less they're going to oppose it over time.
Final follow-up on that. Blackstone Boulevard, the same type of sturm and drang and noise and chaos was attributed to the bike lane development there. Yet people in that community who actually live and work there seem to love it now. Is that the same type of outcome you're predicting on South Water Street?
That's one of the ironies here that we see. If you talk to people who live in the neighborhoods and live in these communities, they want these traffic calming measures. If you talk to people who just want to fly through our neighborhood or fly through our city to get from one place to another, of course they don't want this, right? They want just the convenience of being able to, get in and through our city as quickly as possible, point A to point B. But these are communities and neighborhoods that people live in, and we're designing our city not around cars, we're designing it around people, and this is what our communities and neighborhoods would like.
Amy? Are you at all concerned that perhaps the community and business owners aren't aware of what an urban trail is? I see a lot of the notices that went out referenced urban trails, and now there are businesses that say, well, we didn't know. Perhaps they did, but is that term confusing? Should we just be calling it a bike lane? I realize it's not completely a bike lane, but...
Yeah, and I think that this is all part of the showing the community what it is, what it looks like, how to use it, and I think that what you'll see in this and other projects is that, the parade of horribles that that you hear about will not materialize. And as folks see that it's actually a net positive to their neighborhoods, to their businesses, to the community, they'll embrace it over time. But we're just late to the party. We're 10, 15, 20 years behind, say, Minneapolis. The cold weather city similar to ours that's been able to do it and create such a strong bike culture. It's going to take us some time to get there, but the more that we invest in this and more people engage with it, the more they'll support it going forward.
And one more question.
Yeah.
Emergency vehicles potentially going down that street. Any concern about where they'd be able to navigate?
That was part of the planning process, and I'm satisfied that our team has done their due diligence and has taken that into consideration and into account. It's wide enough to be able to pass. I was down there this past weekend, sort of inspecting it for myself, and it did slow cars down, which is exactly what you want, and it allowed for so much else to happen on the street, including these oversized food trucks that were serving food to residents. So there's enough space on our roads to accommodate all of these uses.
Do you expect you're going to have to wind up in court defending against the DOT on this, or the Federal Highway Administration?
I don't know. We'll see. We still haven't heard anything from the Federal Highway Administration. Again, this is based on a 20-plus-year-old, document that's run its course in its useful life. So I can't imagine, but I think that when folks see how it is, they'll appreciate it and enjoy it. And one last point on South Water Street. South Water Street, when it was first designed, when it was first built, it was literally an on-ramp to the highway. That highway is gone. And so for anyone who's driven down that street who said, this looks like a highway, yes, that's the way it was designed. But now it's a city street. And there are residents and businesses. There's a lot of foot traffic right by the pedestrian bridge. It's a completely different city than it was 20 plus years ago. And, again, we have to design our city for people and not for cars. For people who live in these communities, and not just for folks that want to sort of fly through and out of the city as quickly and as conveniently as possible.
Just looking at that neighborhood, there's been criticism in recent weeks that what was intended as a biotech neighborhood is turned into a sort of a bedroom neighborhood. That they're building residential buildings as opposed to welcoming the biotech industry. Does that concern you?
So that's a bigger question, but again, we had the largest 10-year increase in our population this past 10-year period than we've had since the 1930s. We have a serious population crunch. People need to live somewhere, and we need more housing. That's where demand is. And when you look at downtown, the commercial real estate market has been hit really hard by COVID. I'm not sure it's ever going to go back to the way that it was. I don't think any, major city commercial district is going to go back to the way that it was. And I think that what we can anticipate continuing to see is more residential development, more conversion from commercial to residential. And we live in a time right now where you can live anywhere and work anywhere at the same time. And our focus is creating the kind of environment that people want to be a part of, including having jobs available. But having jobs available, that definition has expanded, because jobs available here doesn't necessarily mean that the jobs have to be physically in the city. They can be anywhere, and they're available to you. And so we know we have a housing crunch, and we support the increased production of new housing units.
All right, last one was 6.
Mayor, just comments on the FOP statement about the issues with the COVID mandate. They say that you're not negotiating with them, having conversations with them. Any comments on that?
So let me address that point specifically, and then I'll touch the bigger issue.
Yep.
That's just not true. So our lawyers have been in touch regularly for some time, and if you want to pursue that story, speak to their attorney, and I think he'll corroborate. We have been communicating. But here's the bigger point. I understood, and still understand a certain level of, vaccine, hesitancy. What I don't understand is, now it's been fully approved by the FDA. Now, we've had enough experience with it. We know that it's safe. We also know, especially as public servants, we know that it's not just about us, but us getting vaccinated has an impact in our entire community, including the folks around us. And we all want to get back to normal. The easiest and fastest way that we're going to get back to normal is by getting everyone vaccinated. And so, the folks who don't want to get vaccinated, I get it and I understand. That's your right. You can't be forced to. But there are going to be consequences to that as well. So what we've told our employees is that either get vaccinated, or you have to do weekly testing, which I think is incredibly fair. And it's just not fair that the rest of us who have done our part will continue to be inconvenienced, or will continue to be stuck in this pandemic by the folks who are skeptical of the science, or for one reason or another refuse to get the vaccine. The last point that I'll make is, we're also sensitive to people who have health issues or real religious issues for why they don't get it, and we built that into our policies. And all we're asking is, look, if you're able-bodied, you're healthy, and you qualify for the vaccine, please get the vaccine. And if you don't get the vaccine, then you have to take weekly testing. I think that's incredibly fair.
All right,
Had
sorry
you
guys,
ever
Mayor
set a
has to go.
deadline? Had you ever set a deadline to
Yeah,
get
October
vaccinated?
1st.
What, in line with the state?
Yeah.
Yes, correct. So October 1st.
Sorry, he's late. Sorry, guys.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We
Yeah,
appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.